Greetings, my brothers and sisters.
Greetings.
Welcome to Sudds-R-Us podcast, hosted by Irene and Ben Sudderth Jr. We're just thankful to God once again that we're able to come before you on this lovely day. We're back, and we're on our 23rd episode in our second season.
Wow.
So it's good to be back. We're talking still with mind-percolating, thought-provoking, and creative content every week around the concepts of the circle of love, where we focus on God, marriage, family, and life. And this week, we're going to continue with life, with family. Family. Last week, we talked about inheritance versus legacy.
Yeah.
So this week, we're going to continue with the focus of family, focusing on the family. And we're going to be talking about practical college prep tips.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, son. We see you. Thank you for tuning in. And speaking of our son, we have to give a shout out to our son, Mr. Podcaster himself, BS3 Radio, Ben Sudderth III. He features our podcast along with more than 20 other podcasters on his platform. And we talk about everything, y'all. Sports, music, life, comedy, culture, movie reviews. That's a new one. And relationships. And of course, marriage. We can't forget about that. But we are all distributed under the archway of BS3 Radio. And you can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on IG, on all social media platforms. And if you are interested, BS3 Radio has expanded and we offer now coaching. If you would like to get into this podcast arena and you don't know where to get started, you are encouraged to contact Ben Sudderth III at BS3 Radio. And that link is scrolling on your screen. We're going to get that for you. There it is. bs3coaching.square.site. Check him out, get connected and get started. So we, the Sudds-R-Us podcast, we've been doing this since October of 2020. We got started during the pandemic and glad that we did. We took a 3-week break and it was like, wow, we're missing, this opportunity to share and to be able to highlight some of the things that God has put on our hearts. So again, we're on all social media platforms as well. We would like for you to follow us, to like, to share, give us your comments, subscribe, give us a review as well. And yes, we do take your questions and any of your comments on our email. If you would like to do so, that's scrolling on your screen right now. And let's get started on these tips for prepping to go to college.
All right. Focusing on family and looking at our tips. Now, first of all, let me just say this. It's our prayer that God will give you the grace for the race, peace for the pace, and he will be the chief ruler in every case. So just stay on base, my brothers and sisters. God's going to tell you when to move with or without haste.
Right.
Because this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And the 4 years may turn into 5 or 6, depending on their grades and depending on their degree. So we have to be mentally and financially prepared. You got to be prepare yourself for the worst case scenario. Just to give you a sports or track metaphor, because we just started the Tokyo Olympics and we watched the opening ceremonies on last night. We love the opening ceremonies because you see all of the countries and you see all the beautiful colors and it kind of reminds us of freshman orientation, where you have all of these students, freshmen, marching across campus and they all have the same colors on and you get this excitement of what's ahead of them. Just like in the Olympics, you get this excitement of what's in the head of all the athletes when they march into the arena during the opening ceremonies. So in order for your children to be academically successful and a productive student, you have to be willing to compromise your time, your wants, your desires, your hobbies, to pour in your best into your child.
That's right.
That means personally taking them to college to visit the campus before enrollment, and then going through freshman orientation with them. Visiting them as often as possible to support them in their extracurricular activities, as far as sports and band and different glee clubs. And also understand that when you give them that attention, that special attention, and when you dedicate that special quality time to them, that God has entrusted you these children. But when you do that, God will give you the ability to afford it. And also not to only afford it, but afford to give your personal time and your extra time. You got to put your personal agenda on hold. Like I said, maybe 4 years, it may be 5 years, but put it on hold and give some quality time and attention to whom God has entrusted in your care.
That's right.
Be available by phone to encourage them, and by text, or even by right now we have Facebook and all these social media networks. Be available to encourage them, because when they're struggling with their lessons, they need to hear their parents' voice, or they need to have some encouragement come from their parents. Now, and parents, we were always appreciative of our upbringing and the sacrifices our parents made. But we also wanted a greater for our children, so we pushed them to propel to the highest heights, to the next level into their destiny and not ours. See, we had our BS degree, but we wanted them to go further because we realized how important it was for their career. And we always told them that a BS degree is like a high school diploma these days.
Right.
So they needed to go higher in order to be successful. And if you give them that moral support, as well as that financial support that Irene's going to cover in a little bit in her segment, it will help them to be able to transition and to not get too homesick. Now, I'm going to tell you, they're going to get homesick. But you don't want them to get too homesick, because what it would get, it would help them to accomplish their goals, and they will get comfortable in verbalizing it with you. So they don't get discouraged to the point of wanting to give up, wanting to quit, wanting to come home. So you need to assist your children in helping paying for their education to avoid further frustrations with tuition and other financial obligations that can complicate matters with them receiving an undergraduate degree. And this will what this will do. This will empower them to finance and complete their graduate degrees on their own. So the most important thing of introducing your children is to family. Introduce them to their family members, the roots, the Southern culture. It's paramount for them to establish their self-worth and tap into their heritage, creative DNA, and personalities. Because of this consistent practice that we did, we visited our home state in North Carolina and South Carolina, where our parents and our grandparents grew up, and we try to do this consistently. So what happened? All three of our children decided to attend Morehouse and Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, which is 3,000 miles away from California, where they were born and raised. But what that did, and we thank God for that they were only 4 hours away from our hometown. So they had family close enough, and also to give them the support and the encouragement that they need. They also had family in Georgia. So relocating here after they graduated from the Bay Area, California, when they started their careers, as an adult life, it wasn't really that difficult for us. The transitional adjustment could have been a lot worse, but it was a lot easier because we know we were close to home where we grew up, where we was born and raised,
right?
And we was here to give them the support. And the Lord opened that early retirement door, we walked through it with faith, and God continued to make a way.
Ooh, thank you.
And we're grateful that God continues to provide for our every need.
Yes.
And we didn't force our daughters, especially, but when they asked us for our help, we were willing to be able to make the sacrifice to come and help them. And we thank God. Our son is self-sufficient, BS3 radio, independent, and driven to be successful in his own right in Dallas, Texas.
Right.
But when he requested our help, and he did at certain times after he had graduated, we were also there to give him the support and also the love that he needed. Now all three have their MBAs, their master's degrees, and are very successful in their career. So in preparing your child for the on-campus life, the parties, the drinking, the sororities, and the drugs,
keeping it real.
Be honest with them about your mistakes and bad decisions that you may have made when you went to college. Because it's easy to get caught up. I tell you, it's easy to get caught up with the freedom of being away from home and you not having to answer to mommy and daddy anymore. It's easy to get caught up in all of the fanfare, and the fun that's going on campus. But if they do, you have to understand that they need someone that they can call on, someone that they can trust, someone that they feel that they can be open with, because it's easy to get caught up. But if you didn't go to college, or if you didn't have a chance to finish school, well, maybe there's a family member or a friend who did and are willing to share their experiences with your children. Encourage them to learn to deal with and address the aftermath and the backlash of bad behavior, of unfortunate bad choices that they may make, and they will make a few. Don't repeat the bad. Toss it and keep the good and learn from your mistakes so they don't have to repeat them. It's good to share with your children about your past, good, the bad, and the ugly. In different shortcomings, bad decisions, STD, drugs, alcohol, premarital sex, pregnancies, abstinence, abortions, if any. Because what you want to do, you want to teach your children before they even enter into that environment.
That's right.
So they can avoid traveling down that same road that you may have traveled down.
That's right.
They can learn from your experiences so they don't have to make the same mistake again. Teach your children life skills before they leave the nest. Don't just kick them out of the house at 18 if you have not prepared them for life. I mean, the real world is waiting for them.
That's right.
And if they're not prepared, the real world can gobble them up, chew them up, and spit them out. And unfortunately, they can come back home a total mess. They can be mentally and psychologically damaged if they're not prepared for what's going to happen on campus. We can't give them all the good. We got to also share some of the bad. We thank God that our children of a godly status and stature, children that have accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and they believe in his word, because we drugged them to church when they were growing up. So now they have that word. They know the word. So they have the word for inspiration. If mom and dad is not available, they know they can go to the word, and Christ will give them an encouragement word from his scriptures. Let me give you this one. Proverbs 23. 22 to 25. This is from the Message Bible. It says, parents rejoice when their children turn out well. Wise children become proud parents.
Right.
So make your father happy and make your mother proud.
That's right.
And then 3 John 1 and 4 says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. You know, before our kids were born, we made a commitment that we were going to help them understand that they are keepers and protectors, but not each other's babysitter.
Mm.
We laid down in love, and God allowed us to produce them. And it was our responsibility to care and to nurture them and prepare them for life's journey. Mm-hmm. We always reference these scriptures of Exodus 20 and 12. It says, honor thy father and thy mother, that the days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. See, God's unconditional love for his children is our example. Mm-hmm. Exodus 6 and 4 says, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, right, but bring them up in the nurturing and the admonition of the Lord. That's right. Our children may not listen to our advice all the time, but the impact was made and the seed was planted. Mm-hmm. It may sometimes take someone else to water it before they get it. That's okay. As long as they get the revelation, as they grow in knowledge and wisdom. Oftentimes we have to back off and giving godly wisdom and advice and let our children bump their heads just a little bit yeah. Because their listening skills become ineffective as they get older. Right. But we're obligated for their training, but not for their performance as an adult.
That's good.
Talk to your children.
Yes.
Talk to them about the he and the me, and the she and the me versus the birds and the bees. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about real graphic talk. Teach them how to treat a woman if it's a young man, not only in words, but in deeds, by examples, by a positive example with their mother and their grandmother, or with a positive example with their father or grandfather, like opening car doors or pulling out chairs and lending them your coat. Or if it's a young lady like cooking or fixing dinner, if they're off campus when they get in their junior or their senior year and they have to have an apartment or they have a roommate, teach them as they're growing up how to cook a meal. And that way they can cook for themselves and they can share that meal. Teaching them good hygiene. Wow. Washing and cleaning one's body is essential, as well as wearing clean and pressed clothing. You know, when I was at Fayetteville State University, I had a roommate. He was like Linus on the Charlie Brown. On Charlie Brown's. He never washed his sheets. And I mean, they were started out as white when we first started the semester. They ended up brown in mid-semester. So teach your children to be not only have good hygiene and personal hygiene, but have respect for their roommate. Right. Keep the side of their room clean. Keep the sheets in their clothes clean. Press their clothes. Wear clean clothes. Teach the boys how to tie a tie so when they go to church on campus, they can go looking like a nice young man. Teach your young girls how to wear makeup. When I say wear makeup, I mean sometimes it's a little bit too much. Sometimes the eyelashes are flashing too long. But teach them the proper way to wear makeup and how to put on mascara. Also explain the importance of having a well-groomed appearance and a pleasant odor with deodorant and also cologne and perfume. But always remind them to keep their studies first and foremost, the number one priority.
That's right.
Let me give you these two scriptures. I'm going to pass you on to Irene. Proverbs 24:13 and 14 says, my son, eat thou honey because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to thy taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul. When thou hast found it, then there should be a reward, and that expectation shall not be cut off. And Proverbs 19:20 from the New Living Translation says, get all the advice and instructions you can, so you will be wise the rest of your life.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for those nuggets. I hope you guys are really appreciating all of this information. We want to give a shout out also to Brian D. Williams. Thank you always for your support.
Yes, thank you
You
for
always show up
Thank
every
you.
weekend. We appreciate it. And whoever else is watching, we appreciate you tuning in as well.
We do. Yes, we do.
So I just want to continue. We had just a short conversation before we got started, and we talked about some of our concerns that we had way back when our kids were in middle school and high school.
Right.
And, you know, to be honest, those are some things that we still remember. And those are some things that we encourage even parents today to begin to think about as your children start prepping for college. And of course, it was their grades, always having to keep those up and not necessarily maintaining a average, but, you want to have at least A, B, C is okay, but try to keep it in the A and the B. Right. Their social skills. We were always concerned about that, with them going off to college and whether they would be able to really, mix and mingle a little bit. And also just being responsible. We felt like sometimes we sheltered our kids a lot. So, teaching them just the basics, how to wash and like he mentioned, cleaning and, all of those basic things that they know they're going to have to do because parents were doing it all along. Passing the ACT because our kids were so focused on going to the East Coast. The HBCUs were so focused on the ACT versus the SAT. Right. I could care less about either one of those scores because we knew what our kids could do academically, but those two are very important depending on where your children decide to go. And also community service hours. Now that was a big to-do when they were getting ready to go to college. I'm not sure about that today, especially since COVID has been rampant, but serving your community is always good. The finances, of course, that was always a concern. Having a good support system wherever your children go. Right. And that was one requirement for our children. Wherever they decided to go, and we pretty much left it up to them, we had to make sure that there was family, not just, friends, family, and very close to them, someone they knew. That could get to them and help them out because we would be so far away, 3,000 miles. And then always wanting them to go to a college in California. That's what we wanted. We didn't want them to try to go so far away. Like we can get to them in an hour or two. But of course, the three of them decided they're going to Georgia. Right. And we were in California. So we really had some work to do. And so that's why I'm stressing it now. Before you get to that college arena, before you even get to the steps, preparation must begin. As I said, middle school is key, In high school, you got some real catch up to do. Right. But you really got to ensure that your children are ready spiritually, first and foremost, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, academically, and socially. Right. Stepping on campus with your son and your daughter can be quite frightening. It was frightening to us. And I can imagine how it must have been frightening to them. But of course, they had to put on that, project that image. Right. But as I said, living 3,000 miles away and sending our children to Georgia was not easy. But one requirement, as I said, is that we had established a support system for our children. And we thank God for them each and every day. They were there, ready and willing and able. And to get this, they also accommodated us when we flew in. So that's family. That's a support system. And we're willing to be that to those that are coming this way. It's so important that your child knows that someone is there for them. So it was helpful for me as we were prepping our kids and prepping ourselves for college, that we developed this checklist. And I will go over it into more detail. That was very helpful on our journey and then becoming empty nesters on the third go round. Right. It really helped us as we, went through year one with Trey and then the second child, 2.5 years later. And then, the third child, 2.5 years after that. It was like, wow, we hope that this helps you on your journey. So, of course, we're always focused on God. And that spiritual well-being is at the top of our checklist.
Right.
Make sure your child goes with the Bible. I know there's a Bible in the phone, but what if that phone isn't working? Have that physical Bible,
Right.
that devotional, whatever that may be, a daily devotional that they can tune into, tap into every day, and then finding a place of worship on campus.
Right.
A lot of the campuses here in Georgia, and I'm not sure if they're everywhere, but they have vans that go to the schools and pick up some of these students. They'll even feed them breakfast or feed them after service. Right. So have your child connect with one of the off-campus worship centers as well. And then there are also Campus Crusades for Christ. They're everywhere. And I recommend that they get connected with a small group on campus as well. Now, for administration, for the parents and the students. Now, if your child is going to a HBCU, listen up. Make a copy of everything you sign. Because for some reason, I don't know what it is, they misplaced the document. So make a copy. I know kids have scanners on their phones. However that is, you figure it out. But what was surprising to me as well was when our son enrolled in Morehouse, they had him sign a form. Right. They're saying this is my personal and private information. So if he ever got sick or if his grades got down, below, we were not informed about that. He had to grant us, his parents, the ones that's paying the money, permission to tap into that information. Right. I don't understand. I didn't understand. They're like, those are the HIPAA laws, that's his private information. Well, guess what? Sign this form, child, so we can get this information. I want the grades. I want to know when he goes in to see the doctor, what's going on. I want to know all of that. And then, so of course, our children did not have a problem with that. But again, that's something that you want to be aware of. Connecting with family. Right. That's one thing that we required. It's when our children went off to school every Sunday, they would call. Well, now you got FaceTime, you got Zoom, you got, what is the other one? I don't know what Androids use, but anyway, you know what I'm saying. You got that video chat where you can do that weekly. And sometimes they would call frequently throughout the week. And that's okay. Be open and be willing to receive, their calls and encourage them to be open and to share any concerns, any fears, any wins, any victories that they've had, and then any struggles, because they will have those as well. Now, clothing necessities, being in California and our children going back to the East Coast, trying to find thermals and corduroys and, boots and, winter stuff was impossible. So we had to come back to Georgia and find those items. So if your children are going up north or down south and you're leaving, a state that doesn't require all of that extra layer, you might want to, consider them, because it gets cold here to where when your nose run, you got ice running down your nose. I'm serious. You need boots, you need earmuffs, you need a face mask. I'm not saying that COVID. I'm talking about the one that covers your head all the way down to your chin with your eyes and your nose out. One of those. Gloves, heavy coats. I'm not saying a jacket. Jackets don't work here. You need a serious coat. And then jeans, corduroys, or, you might need a double layer. Thermal. There you go. I'm talking the long ones. Rain gear. It rains forever here in Georgia. We got rivers running through our yard. So you need a good umbrella, not one of those little totes, one of the little cute ones. You need a hefty one because it'll get flipped out. You need scarves. You need serious sweatpants. Sweaters, I'm telling you, thick socks, you need all of that. And then, of course, the computer items. Our kids are so techie, you know what that is. You know what they need. But if you can, get them a printer, if those are still required, I don't know. But it's always helpful that they have all that they need right there in their room. And then for their dorms, one thing that we thought about, was very crucial is that first aid kit, that fan, because sometimes if they go into an HBCU, stuff do break down, baby. And I mean, it gets in the hundreds. So you don't want your child suffocating. You're right. No AC.
The freshman year,
we upgrading these dorms, and then it take them all year long to do it. So, and get that flashlight with them extra batteries, that Foot Locker. I don't know if they still make those. I could be still dating myself. But, you got, people coming from all walks of life onto one campus that may have little sticky fingers. So you want to provide your children with all of these nice things. And so they need to have somewhere to secure them. And a Foot Locker with a lock and a key is vital. Now that we are still in COVID, make sure that you got them a lot of Lysol spray, hand sanitizer, the mask. Please don't wear a mask, the same mask every day. I mean, those things, if you got the cloth ones, sometimes people wear double, put that cloth one on the outside that you can wash constantly, do what you need to do to protect yourself. Of course, they need the decorations, the TV. One thing I noticed here in Georgia, they do not believe in toilet seat covers. We don't know what folk got. I'm just being honest. So we would have to buy the toilet seat covers in California at Smart and Final. I don't know if that still exists. I love me some Smart and Final, but and ship them. My kids got care packages all the time, and ship them to Georgia. So of course, one of our kids, I can't remember which one it was, they left the whole container of sheet protectors in the bathroom. Of course, they were gone when they went back. So you take one and you use it, and then you take another one when you need to go. But then employment. It's so important that their first year, that they're able to just get acclimated. It's good that you consider your child not working that first year so that they can focus on their academics and then balance their fun life as well. They are going to need to have some fun. And of course, I told our children, whatever it is, maybe it's good that I don't know. And you guys will not believe some of the stories they're telling us now after they've graduated, one in 2000, that's telling us some of the craziest things that they did. And thank God we didn't know about them at the time. It is making me, gulp. It's like, what? But anyway, consider that they get acclimated on that first year. And then perhaps consider that work study on campus. Because some of them won't have a car. So for them to have to take, public transportation, that's always good. So as emergency contacts are concerned, parents and students, add the local police department to your phone. We found that to be very helpful. Never had to use it, thank God. And then each campus has a police. Add that to your phone. And then the other part that we did, we went a step further. We added our contact information and put it on somewhere in their room. Most kids have a magnetic board, and then we shared our information with the roommate. God forbid if there's an emergency and nobody has your information, and then have that roommate share his information with you. So that's crucial, so that you can be contacted, especially if you're miles and miles away. Educational items, what your children need, and the school normally gives you this list of things that they need. So I'm not even going to bother to go with that, except for to say a permanent marker is crucial. Identify every one of your kids' items. Again, like I say, things will grow legs and they will disappear. And if you don't have it clearly marked, everybody's iPad or MacBook looks alike, so how are you going to identify except for, the identifying, password, but still finances. That's why we're saying middle school, even elementary, even when they're babies, start an annuity or something that you can put in monthly deposits. Please don't put it in your local Bank of America where you're going to get a cent every month. I mean, let it grow. Put it in an annuity, invest it. And then so that it'll help offset the cost.
Right.
And then parents, hopefully you've already set up an account. You know, if your children are already in high school heading to college, that they do have an account and that's connected to a Zelle or a Cash App. Because believe me, they're going to be calling constantly. I need money for this. I need money for that. I need money for this, that, and the third is coming. So make sure you got that stash. And then food, you know, late night snacks. Our son would be so excited. Even his roommate, you know, we loved his roommate, and they're friends to this day. I love Chris, and if he's watching, young man, thank you so much for being that model roommate. So whatever was sent, it was expected that it was enough for him as well. So all of your kids, you know, favorite items. You know, of course, now they got, you know, where you can have groceries delivered, but we would pack boxes and boxes of stuff for our kids, all their favorite snacks, and send it once a month. I know they may have been spoiled, but they were our children, and they were not going to be focusing in on their stomach growling and how they going to get from point A to point B. They need to focus on them academics. Go in year 1, come out year 4, done. Done. Healthcare. You know, it was a blessing in California. We had Kaiser, and that was one of the stipulations or one of the requirements that, you know, where they went, that they could utilize that insurance. And thank God Georgia did have Kaiser. So identifying that facility, that just in case, you know, thank God our children never had to go to an emergency room, or, well, Deidre did. She was in the bus accident, but it wasn't, you know, anything serious. But anyway, identify the local healthcare facility for your child so that they know where it is. You know, God forbid when it's an emergency and you don't know where to go, you know, how to get the health care that you need. Housekeeping items, you know, everybody's not as clean as you wish, but you know what those items are, and you know what they need. The main thing, as I said before, is that hand sanitizer, that iron, you know, that ironing board, that laundry bag, that laundry detergent. They need all of that, you know. And even I was so, you know, particular so that my kids wouldn't have to try to carry all this stuff to the shower. Get them a shower caddy where they could put their soap and their, you know, for the ladies, their little body wash and all that little fancy stuff that they need, you know, even dishwashing liquid. I would recommend to our kids, you know, give them some Tupperware as well. I know people don't have Tupperware, but you know what I mean. The plastic containers. So if there was something in the calf that was good and you get hungry in that late night that you're studying, put you some in a container that's in your backpack. And of course you want to have something to wash it with, right? So have some dishwashing liquid. And of course, you know, some type of a dishcloth to clean the dishes with. So for linen, you know what size bed it's going to be. But here's one thing, and you know what all that entails. But one thing, one parent shared with me, and I thought this was the greatest thing ever. You know how people come in and want to sit on your bed? So always have an extra comforter on top. So whenever they come to sit on your bed with their nasty self, whoever it is, it may not have washed or where they, well, who knows where they've been sitting? I'll put it that way. And all those germs, I'm just anti-germ. You know, then that way, when you go to sleep, you're not sleeping underneath that comforter. Of course, organizing tools. I'm like the queen of organizing. It's always helpful to have things in, you know, folders somewhere where you can, you know, retrieve very quickly those copies that the school said they lost, you know. Other essentials, like I mentioned before, extra batteries, you know, clothes hangers, power strips. There's probably just one plug on your side of the dorm. So you're going to need storage boxes, toolkit. There was something that we needed, had to go buy a screwdriver and a hammer and all kinds of things that you know you have at home. It'll be good for your kids to have. Now, for the peers, just encourage your children. I pray that they're already strong-minded and not easily swayed. I mean, it's some city slickers that's going to come to these colleges that know a thing or two that your children may not have even been exposed to. Believe me, our children ran up against some. And, they need to let their no be no and their yes be yes.
Right.
Staying clear of those peers that want to party and don't want to study. Always trying to convince your children, come on, and you can get to that later. Make sure they stay focused. And then watch out for those kids that are always playing video games, got that controller in their hand versus a book or a pencil. Our son, the first year we went in to the dorm, young men were just on this game constantly. I don't know what it was back then, but we came back for a visit shortly after, and I said, what happened to those two young men? They didn't last. That was their focus, getting away from mom and daddy and playing video games all day. That does not work. You're there to get an education and get out of there. And of course, those personal items, what your children need. We just overextended that area. And even more so now with COVID, get them the herbs and the vitamins that they need. If we can recommend anything, get them echinacea and golden seal. That helps to build up that immune system. And get them insect repellent, because if you're coming to the East Coast, that's new blood, that's fresh blood, and these mosquitoes and everything else that bites, they're waiting for them. And of course, vitamin C and vitamin D. Those are essential to keep these young people's immune systems built up. And then their prayer life and their walk with Christ. Encourage them. I assume that they're already doing that, but spend time with the Lord daily and in prayer. And there's one thing, 1 Corinthians, I do want to read, and that's in chapter 10 and verse 23. And it says, all things are lawful. That is morally legitimate and permissible, but not all things are beneficial or advantageous. All things are lawful, but not all things are constructive to character and edifying to spiritual life. So everything is not for them. Everything is not for them. And they, they're really going to have to not feel as if they got to fit in with everybody. And that's okay. You can be that square peg. I'm not saying you have to be square, but you can be that square peg that does not need to fit into that round hole. You can dare to be different.
That's it.
And be a trendsetter, be a visionary, be wise, and pray for that discernment to know the difference and to make good decisions. Philippians 4:6 says, do not be anxious or worried about anything, but in everything. Every circumstance and every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, continue to make your requests known to God, and the peace of God, that peace which reassures the heart, will transcend all understanding. And that peace will guard over your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And that's one thing that you got to encourage your children, not to worry. Not to allow that negativity to overwhelm them, but allow God's peace to consume them. Now, one thing I must say is that roommate situation, and our children, each one of them, maybe 2 out of the 3, they had such a challenge with their roommates. So there has to be some boundaries and some rules established and agreed upon. But first and foremost, your children need to be observant. There are a lot of times when you don't need to say a whole lot, just observe and be alert, and you'll learn a lot about people. And then just help them to establish those rules and those boundaries around visitation, boyfriends and girlfriends, whether they sleeping over, and respecting each other's belongings. And then, while you're studying, not having people over for partying. We had one of our children had a roommate that would just go in her closet, wear, get all of her clothes and wear them. And she passing by, oh, hi. And she's wearing our daughter's clothes. And it's like, well, that, those types of things will and can happen. So they need to kind of have that talk and establish those boundaries. One good thing to know is where, ensure that the smoke alarms work in these dorms. One thing we discovered, some of them did not work. Of course, that means, got to replace the batteries and know where the exits are in the dorm. I know these things sound pretty simple, but, they were very helpful for us. And of course, for their safety, we made sure that they were in place. And so, again, travel, make sure that, your children can get home for Christmas. That's when our kids came home for Christmas. They had to get their Thanksgiving meal somewhere else. So when they flew in August, we got them a round trip back home for Christmas. And then when they flew back in June or July for college to start, or, we made sure that they had a return trip back for the next break. So you always want to, be ahead of the game, and anticipate the things before they happen, mentally and financially, because your children are dependent on that. They want to come home. They do get homesick. They want that home cooked meal. They want to depend on family, but they're so used to being around, their parents and their local friends. So I'm going to close, and I pray that this was of help to anyone that's preparing, if not preparing, now preparing for the future. And the closing scripture, as we always have, is Proverbs, the first chapter, beginning at verse number 8. My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. My child, if sinners entice you, turn your back on them. That's verses 8 and through 10 of Proverbs number 1. So may you be blessed as you prepare to go on this college journey. It's not easy, but get yourself ready. Your kids do deserve to go to college if that's what they want to do. But there's a lot of work that goes into it before they go off. So be blessed. Have a great weekend. We love you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.
Spellman and Morehouse. You guys see them graduating? Those are their diplomas. Yes. It's a blessing when they get that achievement. Bye-bye. Be blessed.